Something felt strange the moment Sandra pushed open the wooden door of the small mountain cafe. The evening air was cold outside, yet her face showed a different kind of coldness, the kind that comes from days of stress, silent fear, and a tired mind trying to stay steady. The soft sound of rain outside mixed with the quietness inside the cafe, creating a calm environment that most people would enjoy. But Sandra was not here to relax. She had driven for hours trying to clear her thoughts, but instead her mind felt heavier than ever. As she stepped inside, the warm smell of tea and old wooden furniture wrapped around her, but she barely noticed it. She felt a wave of dizziness for a moment, but she ignored it, hoping no one had seen the way she slightly lost her balance near the door. She took a slow breath and walked further inside, trying to look normal even though something inside her felt completely off. That is when she saw him. Keanu was sitting alone in a corner of the cafe near the window, holding a cup of warm tea and reading a small book. He looked peaceful in the soft yellow light. His shoulders were relaxed, his eyes calm, and there was a quiet charm around him that somehow made the whole place feel safe. He had not seen her yet, but Sandra froze for a second, her heart beating faster. They had not met in years. Life had taken them in different directions, and even though they remembered each other with kindness, they never planned to cross paths again. She thought about turning around and leaving, but her legs felt too weak, and her mind was too tired to escape anything anymore. So she stayed still for a moment, breathing slowly, trying to find the courage to take another step. Keanu finally looked up. Their eyes met across the quiet room, and Sandra felt her breath catch. Keanu's expression changed from surprise to a warm and gentle smile, the kind that made people feel seen, even without words. But his smile quickly faded when he noticed the slight tremble in her hands. He did not speak yet. He simply watched her with soft concern, trying to understand what she was carrying inside her heart. Sandra forced herself to walk toward the counter. She kept telling herself she was fine, that she just needed a cup of tea, a few minutes of quiet, and then she would leave before her emotions became too heavy. She ordered her drink, but her voice was weak and unsteady. She hoped the cashier did not notice. She hoped Keanu did not notice. She hoped no one noticed. When she turned to find a seat, her vision blurred for a few seconds. She blinked fast, trying to clear it, pretending it was just the lights. She walked past Keanu's table, and for a brief moment their shoulders almost touched. He wanted to ask her if she was all right, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she held herself, trying so hard to stay strong. Maybe it was the silent respect he always had for her boundaries. But he watched her closely. She sat in a quiet corner far from everyone and wrapped her hands around the warm cup the moment it arrived. She tried to breathe in the steam to calm herself, but it did not help. Her hands were still shaking. Her heart was still too heavy. Her head felt light, almost floating. She leaned back in her chair, trying to gather her strength. She looked outside the window at the rain running down the glass. She used to love rainy evenings, but now everything felt different. Everything felt too loud or too quiet, too bright or too dark. It was the kind of exhaustion that sleep could not fix, the kind that comes from keeping too many emotions inside for too long. Keanu noticed she had not touched her tea. He watched her from the corner of his eye, and the concern in his face slowly grew stronger. He respected her space, but something felt wrong, something deep, something he could not ignore forever. He made a decision. He stood from his table and walked slowly toward her, his steps soft enough to not startle her. When he reached her table, he waited a moment before speaking. His voice was calm and gentle. "Are you all right?" Sandra did not answer at first. Her eyes were still on the window, her thoughts drifting somewhere far away. When she finally turned to look at him, there was confusion in her expression, as if she had been pulled out of a dream. She tried to smile, but the smile faded halfway. "I am fine," she whispered. But Keanu knew she was not. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, giving her space but staying close enough to help if she needed it. He did not ask more questions. He simply stayed there in silence, letting her know she was not alone. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain and the distant hum of the cafe's heater. Sandra felt strange comfort in his presence, even though she had not planned to see him again. His calmness was like a warm blanket around her mind, something steady inside a world that felt unstable. She took a deep breath, then another, but the dizziness returned even stronger. Her heartbeat grew louder in her ears. The room started spinning slowly, then faster. She tried to grip the edge of the table, but her fingers slipped. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. Keanu saw it happening. Her eyes lost focus. Her shoulders dropped. Her hands went weak. She tried to stand, but her legs gave up. The moment she rose from the chair, her body tilted forward. She was about to fall face first toward the hard wooden floor. Everything happened in one single second. Her cup fell. She lost consciousness. Her body collapsed. And Keanu moved. He pushed his chair back, reached out with both arms, and caught her just before she hit the ground. He held her safely against him, her head resting near his shoulder, her breathing shallow but present. The entire room went silent. She did not know it yet. But Keanu had saved her in the exact second she needed someone the most. And this was only the beginning. Keanu held Sandra carefully in his arms, feeling how light and weak she had become. Her breathing was soft and uneven, and her skin felt slightly colder than it should. He lowered himself slowly to the floor, keeping her head supported, making sure she did not fall again. The warm lights of the cafe made her pale face look even more fragile, and for a moment he forgot the rest of the world existed. The staff rushed over, but Keanu raised a calm hand, asking them softly to give her space. He did not want Sandra to open her eyes and find many faces staring at her. He knew she would hate that. She always valued her privacy, especially when she felt vulnerable. So he created a quiet bubble around her, protecting her from everything else. She still did not wake up. Keanu gently tapped her cheek. "Sandra, can you hear me?" There was no answer, only her soft, unsteady breathing. His heart tightened, not with panic but with deep concern, the kind of concern you feel when someone who once meant a lot to you suddenly looks like they could slip away if you let go for even a second. Keanu carefully brushed a strand of hair from her face and kept his voice low and steady. "You are safe, I am here, just breathe." The rain outside grew heavier, echoing lightly against the windows. The sound mixed with the slow rhythm of Sandra's breathing, creating a strange calmness. Keanu focused fully on her, grounding his thoughts, refusing to let fear take over. After a few moments, Sandra's eyes moved slightly, like she was trying to find her way back to consciousness. She slowly opened her eyes halfway, confused by the world around her. When her blurry vision finally settled on Keanu's face, she frowned softly, trying to understand what happened. "Keanu," she whispered, voice thin and shaky, "what is going on?" He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You fainted. I caught you before you fell. You are all right." She looked embarrassed for a moment, her cheeks turning slightly pink, but the weakness in her body kept her from sitting up on her own. She tried anyway, but her arms trembled. Keanu quickly supported her back, helping her into a seated position while staying steady behind her so she would not fall again. "You do not have to force yourself," he said gently. "Just breathe." Sandra took a slow breath, then another, but even breathing felt like hard work. "I am sorry," she whispered. Keanu shook his head softly. "You do not need to apologize, you did nothing wrong." Sandra lowered her eyes, clearly struggling with more than just physical exhaustion. Something deeper was hurting her, something she had kept inside for too long. Keanu could feel it. He had always been good at reading quiet emotions, especially hers. The waitress approached nervously with a glass of water, but Keanu spoke softly. "Please just leave it on the table. Thank you." He did not want Sandra to feel overwhelmed by more attention. He wanted calmness around her, something gentle and safe. As Sandra held the glass of water, her hands trembled so much that some drops spilled on her fingers. Keanu covered her hands with his own, steadying them, guiding the glass to her lips. She took a sip. The warm water helped her breathe a little easier. "You scared me for a moment," Keanu said quietly, not trying to sound dramatic but honest. Sandra closed her eyes. "I did not mean to." "I know," he replied. "But something is wrong, Sandra. Your body did not just collapse for no reason." She opened her eyes slowly, and for the first time, Keanu saw a crack in the emotional wall she had been holding up. It was small, but it revealed everything. She blinked quickly, trying to stop her eyes from filling with tears. "I have been pushing myself too hard," she said softly. "I thought I could handle everything, but I guess I was wrong." Keanu nodded slightly. Everyone breaks when they carry too much alone. His words made her look up. Her eyes shimmered with quiet pain. "I did not want anyone to see me like this," she whispered. "Not even you." Keanu moved closer, lowering his voice to a warm, steady tone. You trusted me enough to fall, he said. That means something, and I am not going anywhere. Sandra felt her throat tighten. She looked away, fighting her emotions, but Keanu placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, grounding her, reminding her she did not have to pretend right now. She whispered, I do not want to be a burden. Keanu shook his head. You are not a burden, you are someone who needs support. That is human, that is real, and I am here. Her eyes softened, showing a mix of relief and fear, as if she had been holding this weight for so long that she forgot how to let anyone help her. Keanu stayed by her side, watching her closely, ready to catch her again if she wavered. The faint glow of the cafe lights reflected in her tired eyes. The warm quietness around them gave her a moment to breathe without fear, a moment to simply exist without pretending to be strong. She took another slow breath. Her voice trembled when she spoke next. Keanu, she whispered, I think something is seriously wrong with me. The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Keanu leaned forward, fully focused. Tell me everything, he said softly. And Sandra began to speak, her voice shaking but honest, revealing the truth she had been hiding for weeks. Truth that would lead to a deeper conflict. Truth that would reveal something Keanu never expected. Truth that would change everything about this quiet night in a small mountain cafe. Sandra sat quietly for a moment, her fingers lightly gripping the warm cup that Keanu had placed in her hands. The steam rose gently, but she seemed too lost in her thoughts to notice it. The softness in her eyes began to fade, replaced by a deeper sadness that pulled Keanu's attention even closer. He leaned in slightly, giving her silent permission to speak whenever she was ready. Finally, she lifted her gaze. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. I have been feeling like this for weeks, she whispered. Lightheaded, tired, confused, like my body is giving up even when I try to fight. Keanu stayed still, listening without interruption. I thought it was just stress, she continued. So I kept ignoring it. I worked harder, I slept less. I kept telling myself I was fine, but I am not fine, Keanu. I do not even feel like myself anymore. Her hands tightened around the cup, and her shoulders slowly sank, as if the weight inside her chest had finally grown too heavy to hide. Keanu's voice remained calm. Have you seen a doctor? Sandra shook her head. I did not want anyone to worry, and I thought it would pass. But it did not, Keanu said gently. No, she whispered. The rain continued to fall outside, hitting the windows harder now, as if matching the heaviness in her words. The quiet cafe seemed to shrink around them, turning their small corner into a world of its own. Every sound outside the conversation faded away. Keanu reached across the table and rested his hand near hers, not touching yet but offering quiet support. She looked at him and her tired eyes softened, grateful that he was there. Do you know what caused this? He asked softly. Sandra hesitated. Her breathing became shallow again, her fingers trembled. I think it is everything, she said. The work pressure, the travel, the emotional burden, the people depending on me, the fear of letting anyone down. I kept pretending I was strong enough to handle everything, but my body finally said no. She tried to smile, but it broke apart halfway. Her voice wavered. It is embarrassing. I do not want to be someone who collapses in the middle of a cafe. Keanu leaned closer, his presence steady like a warm anchor in a storm. You are not weak, he said softly. You are human, and sometimes the strongest people collapse because they push themselves harder than anyone else. Sandra blinked fast, trying to hold back the sting of tears. She looked away for a moment, embarrassed by how emotional she felt. I did not come here to break down, she murmured. Nobody chooses when they break, Keanu replied. It happens when the burden becomes too heavy, and you have been carrying it alone for far too long. She swallowed quietly, her throat tightening. I do not know how to rest, Keanu, she whispered. I do not know how to slow down. I am always trying to catch up with expectations, always trying to be perfect, always trying to be strong. I do not know how to admit I am not okay. Keanu listened carefully, his eyes full of empathy. You just admitted it, he said gently. She looked up, surprised. You let yourself be human, and that matters, he continued. And I am here, you do not have to carry this alone anymore. Sandra's lips trembled as she tried to respond, but before she could say another word, her hand suddenly slipped from the cup. The dizziness returned, sharper this time, like lightning running through her head. Keanu reacted instantly. He reached forward, steadying her arm and pulling the cup safely away before it spilled on her. She closed her eyes tightly, gripping the edge of the table as if trying to stop the spinning. Her breaths grew shallow again, fear filling her chest. Sandra, Keanu said, lowering his voice to a calm, gentle tone. Focus on my voice, just breathe slowly. She tried, but her body was not listening. Her heartbeat sped up. Her vision blurred around the edges. Her fingers curled weakly, unable to hold on to anything. Keanu slid his chair closer and placed a hand on her back, supporting her before she could fall again. She leaned into him without meaning to, her body trembling under the pressure of exhaustion and fear. I cannot do this, she whispered. Something is really wrong. Keanu steadied her with both hands now, his expression shifting from concern to determination. Then we will face it together, he said. You are not going through this alone. She closed her eyes slowly, letting out a trembling breath. Just hearing those words took a weight off her chest that she did not realize she was still carrying. Keanu's voice softened even more. I am going to call someone who can help, he said. You need a doctor to check you right away. She shook her head weakly. I do not want to trouble anyone. You are not troubling anyone. You are taking care of yourself, and I will stay with you the whole time. She looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and trust. Promise, she whispered. I promise, he replied without a moment of hesitation. Keanu gently guided her to lean back in her seat while he stood up to make the call. Sandra kept her eyes on him the entire time, as if he was the only stable thing in a world that suddenly felt too unstable to face on her own. And while Keanu spoke quietly with the local clinic, Sandra realized something she had been avoiding for a long time. She was not afraid of collapsing. She was afraid of collapsing alone. And tonight, for the first time in many months, she was not alone anymore. But she did not know that something even more unexpected was waiting ahead. Something neither she nor Keanu saw coming. Something that would test both their strength and their bond. And the night was only getting started. The soft buzz of the heater filled the silence while Keanu spoke quietly on the phone with the local clinic. The rain outside had grown heavier, and lightning flickered behind the distant mountains, giving short flashes of pale light through the windows. Sandra watched him with half-opened eyes, trying to stay awake, trying to stay present, but her body felt like it was sinking deeper into exhaustion with every breath she took. Keanu ended the call and hurried back to her side. He knelt next to her chair and gently lifted her hand to check her pulse. His touch was steady, warm, and calm. She leaned slightly toward him without thinking, her body instinctively knowing where it felt safe. The doctor is on the way, Keanu said softly. They will meet us right here. You are going to be okay. Sandra nodded weakly, but her eyes showed fear, real fear, the kind she had been hiding from everyone, even from herself. Keanu, she whispered, I am scared. He moved closer until she could feel the warmth of his presence. I know you are, but you are not facing this alone. She blinked and a small tear rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, embarrassed, but Keanu gently took her hand and lowered it. You do not have to hide your fear, he said softly. Not from me. His words broke something inside her. A quiet sob escaped her lips, and she immediately tried to control it, but Keanu placed a hand on the back of her head, steadying her, grounding her. Breathe, he whispered. Just breathe. She tried to inhale slowly, but her breath shook. All the pressure, all the stress, all the exhaustion she had buried inside for weeks began to rise, filling her chest like a storm. She felt helpless, and she hated feeling helpless. I should not be like this, she said, voice trembling. I should be stronger. Keanu shook his head gently. Strength is not pretending you are fine. Strength is being honest when you need help. Sandra closed her eyes tightly, letting his words settle inside her. They felt like warm water on a wound she never admitted she had. But then another wave of dizziness hit her. Her hands loosened. Her body sagged forward slightly. Keanu reacted instantly, catching her shoulders and holding her upright. Stay with me, he said. His voice remained calm, but she could hear the worry beneath it. Just keep your eyes open. She tried, but the world around her blurred again. She felt as if she was floating, as if her consciousness was slipping away like sand through fingers. She grabbed Keanu's arm in fear. "Do not let me fall," she whispered. "I will not," he promised. "I promise you." She clung to his sleeve. Her head rested gently against his shoulder, her breathing shallow and uneven. The world around her dimmed again, and Keanu tightened his hold, supporting her weight fully now. He brushed his thumb slowly across the back of her hand, a small gesture, but filled with warmth. "I am here," he whispered again. "I am right here." The minutes felt long and heavy. Sandra drifted in and out of awareness, her breaths unsteady. She tried to speak several times, but her voice vanished every time she opened her mouth. Keanu watched her with a seriousness she had rarely seen in him. He kept checking her breathing, her pulse, and the color of her skin. He was not panicking, but he was deeply focused, fully present, unwilling to let her slip even a little. Finally, Sandra gathered enough strength to speak again. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice barely there. He leaned closer. "I am listening." Sandra swallowed, her throat dry and tight. "I have been feeling something else," she said. "Something I did not tell you." Keanu's eyes narrowed with concern. "What is it?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening around his hand. "I have been having chest pressure," she whispered. "And sometimes my heart beats too fast, and there are moments when I feel like I am going to pass out even when I am sitting." Keanu's breath caught for a moment, but he kept his expression calm so she would not be scared. "How long has this been happening?" he asked gently. 3 weeks, she whispered. 3 weeks. Keanu closed his eyes for a second, steadying himself. Her condition was more serious than he expected. He looked at her pale face, the shaking in her hands, the weakness in her voice. She had been hiding this from everyone, including herself. "You should have told someone," he said softly, "but you told me now, that matters." Sandra's eyes filled with tears again. "I did not want to worry anyone. I thought I could handle it." "Your body is asking for help," Keanu replied. "And you listened today, that is brave." She looked at him, weak but honest. "I did not listen," she said. "I collapsed." "And I caught you," Keanu replied. "And I will keep catching you until you can stand again. That is what matters." Before she could respond, a sudden sharp pain spread across her chest. Sandra gasped, grabbing the side of her ribcage. Her breath caught in her throat. Her face tightened in pain. Keanu's eyes widened. He quickly placed one hand on her back and the other supporting her shoulder, keeping her upright. "What is happening?" she whispered, fear rising in her voice. "Your body is overwhelmed," Keanu said gently, "but you are not in danger. I am here. You are not alone." She nodded weakly, trying to breathe through the pain. Then something unexpected happened. Sandra's hand slipped from his arm, and she began to fall sideways again, her body giving out. Keanu caught her mid-fall, lifting her into his arms without hesitation. He held her close to his chest, supporting her head against his shoulder. She could barely keep her eyes open now. "You are safe," he whispered. "Stay with me. The doctor is almost here." Sandra whispered something he almost did not hear. "Thank you." Keanu tightened his hold slightly, his expression soft and full of worry, but also full of deep respect. "You would have done the same for me," he said quietly. She managed the smallest smile before her eyes slowly closed again. And Keanu held her, refusing to let her slip away. Neither of them knew it yet, but what the doctor would say next would change the direction of their night completely. And the truth was closer than they thought. The rain outside had softened, but the tension inside the small mountain cafe grew heavier with each passing second. Keanu held Sandra carefully in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder while her breathing remained uneven and shaky. Her skin felt cooler now, and every few moments a soft tremor passed through her body. He could feel how fragile she had become, as if one wrong movement could break the last bit of strength she had left. He kept whispering to her, his voice calm even though the worry inside him tightened like a fist. "Stay with me," he murmured. "You are safe. I am right here." Sandra's eyelids fluttered. She was barely conscious now, drifting in and out like someone fighting a heavy tide. Every time her eyes closed for too long, Keanu gently touched her cheek or squeezed her hand, guiding her back to awareness. The cafe owner approached them quietly, speaking in a low voice. "The doctor just called. They are a few minutes away. Do you need anything in the meantime?" Keanu shook his head softly. "Just keep the place quiet, please. She needs calm." The owner nodded and stepped back, giving them space. Keanu looked down at Sandra again, brushing his thumb across the back of her cold hand. He felt her fingers move slightly, trying to curl around his. Even in her weakened state, she was trying to hold on to something steady, something safe. "I have you," he whispered again. Sandra's lips parted and a soft breath escaped her. She opened her eyes slightly, but the room spun in her vision, making her wince. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice weak and thin. "I am here," he said quickly, leaning closer. She blinked slowly, struggling to focus. "I feel like I cannot breathe." He wrapped his arm tighter around her back, supporting her fully now. "Just keep breathing slowly. I am not letting you fall." She tried to inhale deeply, but a sharp pain shot across her chest again, making her tense up involuntarily. Keanu placed a steady hand on the side of her ribs to keep her from curling into the pain. "Easy," he said. "I know it hurts, but you are not alone." Her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. The exhaustion, the fear, and the pressure of keeping everything bottled up finally cracked through. "I am so tired," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I cannot pretend anymore." Keanu felt something ache inside his chest at her words. He reached up and gently wiped away a tear that slid down her cheek. "You do not need to pretend with me," he said softly. "You never did." She closed her eyes as more tears quietly escaped, each one carrying the weight of the weeks she had suffered in silence. "I thought I could handle everything," she whispered. "I thought I could push through, but I feel like I am falling apart." Keanu lowered his forehead close to hers, his voice calm and warm. "Falling apart in front of someone who cares means you are strong enough to stop suffering alone." His words made her cry even harder. She clutched his shirt weakly, her fingers trembling, her voice trembling even more. "I did not want to be a burden," she said. Keanu gently lifted her chin so she could look at him, even through her blurry vision. "You are not a burden," he said. "You are someone who deserves support, someone who deserves rest, someone who deserves to be cared for." She looked at him, but before she could respond, her breath hitched sharply and her body leaned forward again. Keanu's arms wrapped around her immediately, stabilizing her, keeping her from collapsing. In that exact moment, the cafe door opened, and the doctor stepped inside with a medical bag, shaking off the rain from their jacket. They moved quickly toward Keanu and Sandra. "Keanu Reeves," the doctor said with a calm but urgent tone, "I am the one you spoke with." Keanu nodded, relief flooding his face. "She fainted twice. She has chest pressure, dizziness, and weakness. She can barely stay conscious." The doctor kneeled beside them and began checking Sandra's pulse, her breathing, and her skin temperature. Sandra tried to sit up straighter, but her body was too weak, and Keanu kept supporting her from behind. After a few moments, the doctor looked at Keanu with a serious expression. "She needs immediate rest and medical monitoring," the doctor said. "Her symptoms show extreme exhaustion, dehydration, and possibly an acute stress response. Her body is shutting down from pressure." Sandra closed her eyes, a wave of shame crossing her face. "I am sorry," she whispered. The doctor shook their head gently. "There is nothing to be sorry for. You pushed yourself too far. Now your body is demanding you stop." Keanu tightened his hold around her and spoke softly. "You hear that? You are not weak. You are exhausted. That is different." The doctor continued the check. "Has she eaten properly in the last few days?" Keanu looked at Sandra. She hesitated, then whispered, "Not really." The doctor nodded knowingly. Lack of nutrition plus emotional stress is a dangerous mix. She needs to rest immediately, drink water, and avoid any more strain. If she pushes herself again, it could lead to a serious collapse. The word collapse made Sandra flinch. Keanu noticed and gently stroked her arm. "You are safe now. I will not let that happen." The doctor prepared a warm electrolyte drink from their bag and handed it to Keanu. "Have her drink this slowly. It will help stabilize her." Keanu held the cup to Sandra's lips. Her hands were too weak to hold it, so he guided it gently. She took slow, small sips, her breathing still shaky. "Good," Keanu whispered. "You are doing well." The doctor stood up. "I will stay nearby in case she needs more help, but she mainly needs rest and calm. Do not let her walk or stand alone." Keanu nodded with determination. "I won't." When the doctor stepped to the side, Sandra leaned fully into Keanu's chest, her voice barely audible. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Keanu looked down at her, surprised by the question. "Because you needed someone," he said softly. She swallowed hard, new tears forming. "But I thought you moved on. I thought you did not feel the same connection anymore." Keanu gently placed his hand on the back of her head, guiding her closer. "Sandra," he whispered, "connections like ours do not disappear. They just wait quietly until they are needed again." She closed her eyes, her breath trembling, touched in a way she did not expect. "I did not think I mattered anymore," she said, her voice cracking. Keanu held her tighter, his words slow and full of truth. "You have always mattered, even when we were apart, even when life moved in different directions. None of that erased the respect I have for you." She felt her heart soften in a way she had been avoiding for too long. She felt safe. She felt understood. She felt seen. And then, with a deep, trembling breath, she whispered something she had not told anyone. "I was afraid that if I fell," she said softly, "no one would catch me." Keanu pressed his forehead gently against hers. "Then let this night remind you," he whispered, "you will never fall alone again." Her eyes filled with emotion, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe she was worthy of kindness. She rested in his arms, her breathing slowly finding a steady rhythm. Keanu held her like she was something fragile but important, something he was determined to protect with everything he had. But neither of them knew that the most emotional moment of the night had not happened yet. It was coming, closer with each breath she took, and it would change everything. The rain outside finally began to fade, turning into a soft drizzle that tapped gently on the windows. The sky remained dark, but the storm had lost its force, almost as if it sensed the heavy emotions happening inside the small mountain cafe. Sandra lay resting against Keanu's chest, her breathing slow but more stable now. The warmth of his arms wrapped around her like a protective shield she did not know she needed until tonight. The doctor stayed nearby, checking her every few minutes, but they finally stepped back and gave them space when they confirmed she was improving. Sandra opened her eyes slowly, her head heavy but her mind clearer than before. She felt safe. She felt calm. She felt held not just physically but emotionally. Keanu looked down at her, eyes warm, voice gentle. "How do you feel?" She took a slow breath. "Tired but better, I can breathe now." He brushed a strand of hair away from her face with careful fingers. "Good, take your time, do not rush anything." Sandra looked around the quiet cafe, then back at him. She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to understand something she had never allowed herself to notice before. The steadiness in his expression, the concern in his eyes, the patience in his touch. All of it felt overwhelming in the softest way. After a moment, she whispered, "Keanu, why did you stay with me this whole time? You could have left. You had no reason to take care of me." He did not look away. "You needed someone who would not judge you, someone who would listen, someone who would stay. That is reason enough." She lowered her eyes, emotions tightening her throat. "I did not think I deserved that." Keanu placed his hand on her cheek, lifting her chin so she would look at him again. "You deserve kindness. You deserve rest. You deserve support. Everyone does." Her eyes softened. "I forgot that." "You forgot yourself," he said gently, "but I am here to remind you." She leaned into his hand, allowing herself to feel that comfort without guilt. For the first time in a long time, she allowed someone else to carry part of her weight. It felt strange and beautiful at the same time. Keanu's voice softened more. "Sandra, you have spent so long being strong for everyone else that you forgot you are allowed to fall sometimes. You are allowed to be human." Her eyes filled with tears again, but these tears were different. Softer, lighter, filled with relief instead of fear. She whispered, "I do not know how to thank you." Keanu shook his head gently. "You do not need to." She breathed quietly for a few seconds, then let her eyes drift across the window. The rain had almost stopped. The world outside looked peaceful, washed clean, quiet. "Can we go outside for a moment?" she asked softly. Keanu hesitated, checking her condition. "Only if you let me help you stand." She nodded. He slowly helped her sit up straight, keeping one arm behind her back to support her. She felt dizzy again for a second, but Keanu steadied her with a gentle touch along her spine. "Go slow," he murmured. "I will not let you fall." Sandra leaned into his support and stood up carefully. Her legs were weak, and she held onto his hand tightly. Keanu slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her close enough to keep her steady but far enough to give her space. Together, they walked toward the door. The cafe owner quietly opened it for them, giving them a small nod of understanding and respect. The cool night air greeted Sandra the moment they stepped outside. It brushed across her skin like a calm whisper, easing the heat in her chest and clearing her mind. The rain had stopped except for a few soft drops, and the mountain air smelled fresh, clean, and full of quiet possibility. Sandra looked up at the sky. "It is peaceful now," she whispered. "You needed this," Keanu replied. She turned her face slightly, looking at him. "I needed more than this. I needed someone to tell me it was okay to rest." Keanu held her hand a little tighter. "Then listen now. It is okay. You do not need to fight alone." She exhaled slowly, letting the truth settle inside her. "I have been scared for a long time, Keanu." He nodded gently. "Fear grows in silence. It shrinks when you share it." Her lips trembled. "I forgot how to share anything," she said softly. "I forgot how to trust." Keanu brushed his thumb over the back of her hand. "Trust comes back when someone proves they will stay. Let me prove it." She swallowed hard. "You already did." They stood there quietly for a moment, the world still around them, the night holding its breath. Then Sandra leaned her head slowly against his shoulder. "Keanu," she whispered, "I thought that if I ever fell, no one would be there for me. But tonight you caught me. You did not hesitate." His voice softened deeply. "I would catch you every time. That is who I choose to be." She closed her eyes, letting his words settle in her heart. She had spent so much time being strong alone that kindness felt almost foreign. But here, in this quiet moment, under the soft night sky, she allowed herself to feel it fully. After a long silence, she asked, "What now?" Keanu turned slightly so he could look at her more clearly. "Now you rest. You take care of yourself, and I stay with you until you are ready to walk on your own." She blinked, surprised. "You would stay that long?" "As long as you need," he replied. Sandra felt a warmth spread through her chest, pushing away the fear that had lived there for weeks. She felt safe in a way she had forgotten existed. "Thank you," she whispered again, this time with more strength. Keanu smiled softly. "You do not have to thank me for caring." She took another deep breath, this one calmer than all the rest, and stepped closer to him, letting his presence be her anchor. The doctor approached them outside, checking on her one final time. After confirming she was stable and able to rest properly, they gave a reassuring nod. "She will be all right as long as she does not push herself," the doctor said. Keanu nodded firmly. "I will make sure she doesn't." Sandra looked at him with a soft, grateful smile. "You do not have to take responsibility for me," she said quietly. Keanu gently shook his head. "Some people are worth standing beside. You are one of them." Those words settled inside her like warm light. They walked slowly back inside the cafe for a last few minutes before heading to a nearby guest house the doctor recommended for her to rest. Keanu stayed by her side the whole time, watching over her, speaking softly, and keeping her steady whenever she felt weak. When they finally reached the quiet room where she would rest, Sandra sat on the edge of the bed and looked up at him. "Keanu," she whispered, "this night changed me." He sat beside her and took her hand gently. "Sometimes life reminds us what really matters," he said. "Tonight you remembered you are not alone." Sandra's eyes softened with a warmth that had been missing from her for a long time. "You caught me before I hit the floor," she whispered, "but you also caught the part of me that was falling inside." Keanu squeezed her hand, "And I always will." She smiled, a real soft smile that reached her eyes. In that moment there was no fear, no pressure, no loneliness, just quiet understanding, gentle respect, and a connection built on kindness. Sandra leaned her head on his shoulder again. "Stay a little longer," she whispered. Keanu nodded. "I am not going anywhere." And as she finally drifted into a peaceful sleep, her breathing calm and steady, Keanu sat beside her in quiet silence, watching over her with the same care he had shown from the beginning. He stayed because he wanted to. He stayed because he cared. He stayed because sometimes the most powerful kindness in the world is simply being there when someone needs you the most. The night ended not with fear, but with healing. Not with collapse, but with connection. Not with distance, but with respect. And Sandra would remember this night forever. The night she almost hit the floor, but instead fell into the safest place possible. Keanu's arms.